Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I call this meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
You certainly can. Peter, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
All right, excellent. All right. Kathleen Taylor?
Here.
Kate Nelson?
Here.
Kyle West?
Here.
Francine Donchik?
Here.
Mark Johnson?
Here.
Peter Gower?
Here.
Sarah Chavilicek?
Here.
Scott Carey? Present. And Shelley Reed?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's no feedback on the microphone.
Yeah, we think we actually figured it out this time.
If everybody would stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner
Sorry,
Donchik.
Commissioner Donchik for the record.
Commissioner Taylor, second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4 is public comment. Do we have any public comment from the room or from Zoom?
There's none for this item, but there will be for item 5C.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Of course.
So we're at business of the day, item 5A. Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 5A is a request for sponsorship for a tier change, and that is going to be presented by Regional Planner Chris Tully.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Tully, Team RPA. So this item is for the sponsorship of a regional plan amendment to change regional land designation on one property in Sun Valley. There we go. The proposal, which will be detailed on the following item, includes an amendment from Tier 3 to Tier 2 for an approximately 45.51 acre parcel. The parcel is located west of Chocolate Drive between West 4th Avenue and West 2nd Avenue. Team RPA provided an initial review memorandum to Washoe County regarding the proposed master plan amendment, which sought to change the master plan land use designation from suburban residential to urban residential and open space. As noted, as noted in this IRM, the subject parcel lies within the Tier 3 regional land designation, where the maximum density is the existing land use density. The IRM did identify that the proposal would require a regional plan amendment, but it did not specifically outline the sponsorship process, so that's what this item's for. The sponsorship details moving forward will be consistently included in the IRMs, and we've had this discussion with Washoe County also about the sponsorship of a regional plan amendment. So in order to amend the regional plan, the Nevada Revised Statutes and the Regional Planning Governing Board's regulations on procedure identify that a proposal has to be sponsored by the RPC, RPGB, or one of the governing bodies. Regional planning staff has long held that the governing body seeking the change should ideally sponsor the amendment. The Washoe County Board of County Commissioners' approval means they supported the project and would likely have sponsored this amendment. Regional planning staff is recommending that the RPC sponsor this amendment, and as you can see on the agenda, the following item will present the amendment itself. So the proposed motion is on the slide. This does conclude my presentation, and Team RPA staff or Washoe County staff are available for any questions. Thank you.
Prior to questions, is there any public comment on this item? On 5A?
We have received none at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just kind of curious, and maybe I'm not understanding this correctly. So how did Washoe County process the land use amendment without looking at the regional tier? Was something missed along the way here?
I don't think anything was missed. They looked at their portion of this, which was the amendment to the master plan. And kind of as an aside, an additional process would be to go through the tier amendment process. Because as I alluded to, the Tier 3 regional land designation limits to the existing density, whereas in Tier 2, they can go up to 30 dwelling units an acre. So what our IRM intended to do was to say, hey, you need to go through this process. And what it didn't also say was you need to, or you ideally should sponsor it as well. But you have to go through this process regardless, in addition to the conformance review portion.
Sounds like the system worked. Thank you.
Any other questions? This is an action item, so we need a motion on this to sponsor this project? Oh, wait a minute.
Motion went away.
It went away. Well, we don't have echoes.
That's the win.
It's also on page 2.
Yes, it's on page 2 of your packets.
I'll take a stab at it, Madam Chair. I move to sponsor the Chocolate Drive Amendment to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan as described in the staff report and direct staff to bring forward the amendment for consideration by the Regional Planning Commission in a public hearing.
Madam Chair, Commissioner West, I second that motion.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we're now on to item 5B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. And so item 5B will be now the substantive portion where we'll take a look at the case. Chris Tolley will be presenting this case again.
Prior to that, is there any disclosures from any commissioners on this item? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Commissioner Taylor, I did speak to the applicant's representative, I believe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening once again. Chris Tolley, TMRPA. So this item is a regional plan amendment and conformance review for the Chocolate Drive Amendment to the Washoe County Master Plan. The proposal is an amendment to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan to change a subject site from Tier 3 to Tier 2, and a conformance review for the amendment to the Washoe County Master Plan to change the subject site from suburban residential to urban residential and open space. The Washoe County Board of County Commissioners approved this project at their June 28th meeting and overturned the Washoe County Planning Commission's technical denial of the proposal. Regional Planning staff does recommend that the proposed amendments conform with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. The Regional Land Designation Amendment, so we'll go over the RPA first. Actually, I skipped this portion. There we go. All right, so first we'll go over the overview for the Regional Plan Amendment portion of this. So the Regional Land Designation Amendment, again, is from Tier 3 to Tier 2 and is required because a property owner is proposing to construct a low-income, affordable, multifamily development, which is not permissible under the suburban residential land use and implementing zone districts. The urban residential land use and implementing zone districts would allow a multifamily development. For our purposes here at Regional Planning, the Tier 3 lands are limited to the existing density, which is set by the suburban residential land use. Tier 2 may go up to 30 dwelling units per acre, which is appropriate for the urban residential land use. The suburban residential land use in the Sun Valley Area Plan allows a maximum of 7 dwelling units per acre, while the proposed urban residential land use would allow a greater density of 21 dwelling units per acre. The anticipated low-income, affordable, multifamily development is proposed for approximately 240 units, or around 6 dwelling units per acre. For this density, and this density is currently allowed in the suburban residential land use, or this level of density. And now to go over the conformance review portion of this. So as prefaced, this request is also for an amendment to the Washoe County Master Plan, land use from the site, on the site, from 45.51 acres of suburban residential to 40.64 acres of urban residential and 4.87 acres of open space. Again, the purpose of the tier and land use change is to essentially allow a multifamily use type. The open space will include the DCA for slopes greater than 30% found on the site. And then the overall proposal considered by Washoe County includes a zoning amendment from medium-density suburban to medium-density urban and open space, following the land use designation boundaries. The medium-density urban zoning allows, again, for multifamily through an administrative permit process. And then we'll switch this up a little bit from how the normal flow, just to include policy RF5, which addresses the regional land designation amendments. And as you can see on the right-hand side, this is the criteria for inclusion into the Tier 2 lands area. In this case, the criteria analysis is embedded in the analysis provided for policy RC10. We'll be going through that in a second. And considers, so this portion of RF5 considers a finer view of the regional form, regional land designation requirements identified in policy RF3, public facilities and compatibility. Policy RC10 of the 2019 regional plan identifies the 7 criteria that the RPC and RPGB must consider when evaluating a regional plan amendment. We'll go over that next. And then finally, the conformance review portion is addressed by policy RC9, and that'll be following the regional plan amendment portion. So here are the 7 criteria, and we'll step through those that we've included in the presentation or the pertinent information. So in regard to the first 2, the 2020 and forthcoming 2022 consensus forecast both identify that the population in the region will continue to increase over the next 20 years by about 100,000 residents. The increase in potential residential density as a result of the proposed tier change is limited to 1 parcel, which is adjacent to Tier 1 lands. As noted, Tier 2 would allow for a maximum of 30 dwelling units per acre. However, the actual development being proposed is for approximately 6 dwelling units per acre. And then existing development within the appropriate proximity from the subject site will benefit from public infrastructure investment. This includes improvements to Chocolate Drive, as well as the wastewater conveyance system. And then to go over number 3, existing and planned public facility and service availability, timing, adequacy, and fiscal impacts. So the water facility is required to be constructed by the developer, and the Sun Valley General Improvement District has available and adequate capacity to serve the proposal. The wastewater conveyance system is anticipated to receive targeted improvements in addition to on-site improvements constructed by the developer. The SVGID has wastewater treatment capacity pursuant to their allotted treatment share at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. And regarding transportation, the primary set of improvements is anticipated to be adjacent to the subject site on Chocolate Drive. And based on information submitted by Washoe County, Chocolate Drive would be required to be improved to the requisite standard, including paved roadway, curb gutter, and sidewalk. And then regional planning staff reviewed the Washoe County School District's school zones and enrollment data from the previous school year. And future development of the site will be served by the Allen Elementary School, Desert Skies Middle School, and the newly opened Proctor Hug High School. The 2021-2022 enrollment data showed that Allen and Desert Skies had enrollment capacity, and enrollment data is not currently available for Hug, however, not anticipated to contain adequate capacity for students. On to natural resources. A review of the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Map 4 Development Constraints area identified that the western portion of the subject site contains a small portion of Development Constraints Area, or DCA, for natural slopes over 30%. These areas are proposed to be included in the open space land use designation. The submittal to Washoe County identified the presence of altered andesite buckwheat on the adjoining properties to the west, which is owned by Washoe County and designated open space by Washoe County, and to the southwest, which is owned by the University of Nevada, Reno, and designated mixed employment by the city of Reno. Altered andesite buckwheat is endemic to the altered andesite soils around Reno and Sparks, and while the species is not listed federally as threatened or endangered, it is listed as at risk on the Nevada Division of Natural Heritage's plant and animal tracking list, and listed as sensitive species, asensitive species by the Bureau of Land Management. These listings do not provide for formal protection on private land, but nevertheless should prompt concern when they are indicated when they indicate a special nature of this particular buckwheat, which is found only in this region and only on specific mineral soils. To the best of our knowledge, the altered andesite buckwheat is not present on the site, but it is certainly in close proximity, and potential impacts of the species resultant from any development nearby should be acknowledged. And while TMRPA cannot condition projects, we would encourage any on-site development to consider the species habitat in the project design and to incorporate altered andesite buckwheat to the extent possible into the landscaping plans. And for the final portion of the RPA portion of the review criteria, at least for this presentation, is the regional land designation amendment criteria that we alluded to in the policy overview slide. So as introduced, there are specific criteria to meet, and the analysis was included in this section of the staff report. So here's a summary. So this was, again, for lands seeking inclusion into Tier 2. A change to Tier 2 on the site represents an appropriate transition to a higher tier, especially considering the limited scope of the project. The Tier 2 designation caps potential development at 30 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density falls within the minimum and maximum for lands within Tier 2. The Sun Valley area of unincorporated Washoe County was identified through the regional plan update as being appropriate for Tier 1 lands. This decision was based on allowing greater development potential to foster an increase in public and private investment in the area. And now on to the review criteria for the conformance review portion. So these are the 5 criteria, or the 5 sections criteria that we present for the conformance reviews. And we'll step through these quickly because a lot of the analysis was also found in the RPA portion. So in regards to population growth, the proposed amendment will support a range of housing types and sizes and densities in Sun Valley area, and also supports the 2019 Regional Plan Policy PF4, Affordable Housing Strategies. Furthermore, this overall proposal has been approved by the Washoe County Home Consortium for home funding. And then Regional Forum and Public Facilities Services. In the Sun Valley area, the proposed urban residential land use allows a density range of up to 21 dwelling units per acre. However, the actual anticipated development being proposed is for approximately 6 dwelling units per acre. The proposal would redesignate the site from approximately 45 acres of suburban residential to 40 acres of urban residential, and the balance of that being open space. And the materials submitted by Washoe County indicate that public facilities and services will be available and adequate to serve the proposal as required by Policy PF1 of the regional plan. And the development will be served again by Allen Elementary and the Desert Skies Middle School and the Proctor Hug High School. And then finally, to reiterate briefly, there is DCA for slopes greater than 30%, which is proposed to be located in the open space land use. And the submitted materials show the presence of altered andesite buckwheat in the project area. The regional planning staff, again, encourages the property developer to consider this plant species and project design and to incorporate it into the landscaping plans. And then for a review conclusion, so in conclusion, staff is recommending that the proposal conforms with the applicable policies of the regional plan. Primary policies, again, include RF5, RC10, RC9, and then finally, the regional lens for this proposal includes a wider view than most projects or proposals. The analysis presented references decisions arrived at through the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Update and the Washoe County Home Consortium funding process. And with that, on to the motions. So the proposed motions are on the screen. This does conclude my presentation. However, Team RPA, Washoe County staff will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Before we take questions from the commissioners, is there any public comment on this item?
We've received none for this item.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Shivlik. I have a quick question. Thank you, Chris. I heard a lot of stuff, but I heard affordable housing. Did I hear that right?
You certainly did.
How many units?
It's 240 total units is what we're anticipating that they're going to come through with the actual proposal for the development.
Okay, so that was the other word I heard was proposed affordable housing. What's the teeth in the affordable housing? How do we make sure that it stays that way?
So I think they pretty much locked themselves into this, and what the developer did to, I guess how the project unfolded is they went through and did the land use change and the tier change first, and then my understanding is they actually submitted for review maybe this last week for the actual development proposal. At the same time, they went through the Washoe County Home Consortium funding process, and they secured, I believe it's $200,000 in home funds.
That's kind of what
Yeah.
I was looking for.
And that locks them into an affordability period of 30 years. And I believe there are other components they are pursuing that I don't know if we're all like fully aware of, but.
You answered my question. That's kind
yeah.
of what I was looking for. My other question is, it seems like just yesterday we did a review and we reviewed tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So going from tier 3 to tier 2, in your opinion, this is applicable to move the tiers?
Yes, yeah. And so certainly that is the case. And the 2019 regional plan update could reasonably have included this property.
Okay.
Staff was looking at a certain buffer from Sun Valley Boulevard, which if that buffer was extended slightly, it would have included this property. So I think in hindsight, and this is in the staff report, it would have been, this property certainly could have been included in tier 1.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I do have some, I appreciate the natural resource component of bringing in the altered andesite buckwheat. But this area, this proposed development is adjacent to a proposed regional park that's years away. But there's also critical nesting sites on this property that are adjacent to this property, so I just want that into the record as well. So commissioners, we have 2 amendments. And I would propose that we take the first one and then the second one. Don't try to lump them together.
Madam Chair, there's a
Yes.
2/3 majority of the entire body
Yes.
required on both items.
So we'll do a roll call vote on this after we have a motion. Commissioner Taylor?
I'm prepared to make a motion. For the regional plan amendment, I move to adopt RPC Resolution 2202 regarding an amendment to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Nelson, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? If we could do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, we certainly can. Kathleen Taylor,
Yes.
Kate Nelson,
Yes.
Kyle West,
Yes.
Francine Donchik,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Peter Gower,
Yes.
Sarah Chivilicek,
Yes,
Scott Carey,
Yes.
and Shelley Reed.
Yes.
All right.
motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So a motion for the conformance review?
Madam
Commissioner-
Chair.
I think Commissioner
sorry.
Donchek moved her microphone first, so I'll go with her. I was watching movement.
Commissioner Donchik, I move to approve.
Can you read the motion, please? It's on up above, or?
I move to find the Chocolate Drive Amendment to the Washoe County Master Plan in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, Commissioner West, I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Carey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of the conformance review. I think that the requested density, although it is kind of on the edge of the existing Sun Valley area, I think it's consistent with the regional plan's vision for this area. And I thought staff did a good job in the staff report talking about the need to increase density along the core and how it's served by transit. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think so that'll help fulfill, the increased density will help fulfill that part of the regional plan. But I also think that the affordable housing component of this and having it be locked in with home consortium funds will help fill an important need in this part of the region as well, too. So I'm supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Again, this will be a roll call vote.
All right. Kathleen Taylor,
Yes?
Kate Nelson,
Yes.
Kyle West,
Yes.
Francine Donchik,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Peter Gower,
Yes.
Sarah Chavilicek,
Yes,
Scott Carey,
Yes.
and Shelley Reed.
motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on to 5C.
Thank you, Madam.
Director,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Smith, for the record, item 5C is a public hearing item, a regional plan conformance review from the City of Reno. It's a project of regional significance for Ormat Solar, and we have Nate Kusha, policy analyst for this item.
so prior to the presentation, are there any disclosures? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before, I wanted to make a public disclosure on this item. As part of my role with the state of Nevada, I've been involved with the review of this project. And at the July 15th City of Reno Planning Commission meeting, I did provide written comments on behalf of my employer and did publicly take a position on this project. As a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, AICP, I am bound by a code of ethics and professional conduct in the spirit of the code and the principles us as AICP members are bound to uphold. I would like to publicly disclose that I have, within the past years, publicly advocated for my employer a position on this project. In accordance with the AICP Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, I feel that due to my previous involvement with this project on behalf of my employer, that I cannot participate in this agenda item without causing a detriment to my employer or on my role here as a member of the commission. So therefore, in order to avoid a conflict of interest, or even the appearance of a conflict of interest, I will be respectfully recusing myself from participating in the deliberations on this item and will not be voting on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other disclosures? Okay, thank you.
Great. Good evening, Commissioners. Nate Kusha for the record. As Director Smith mentioned, this is a conformance review for a proposed City of Reno project of regional significance, and this case number is CR 22-009. So this request is for the installation of a 7 megawatt photovoltaic solar field and is being evaluated as a PRS for being a facility that generates electricity greater than 5 megawatts. Regional planning staff does recommend that this PRS conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. So this site is located approximately 3,500 feet south of Mount Rose Highway, and it's directly south of the Steamboat Ditch in between South Virginia Street and I-580, and lies in Tier 2 of the TMSA. The solar energy generated from these solar panels will be used for the existing geothermal plant, that's the Ormat geothermal plant, on site, and no energy produced from the solar field will be sent to the NV Energy grid. So due to a fire in 2021, there is sparse vegetation on the site, and thus the effects on flora and fauna habitat are very limited. Additionally, the proposed solar panels are expected to have very limited visual impacts due to the placement and height of the solar arrays, as well as the requirement to use an anti-glare coating on the solar panels. So policy RC9 identifies the 5 factors the RPC must consider when evaluating conformance. So this project will have no impact on population growth, regional form, public facilities and services, or regional coordination. It does support policies PF18, renewable energy generation, and NR14, sustainable development, which both encourage the use and development of alternative or renewable energy sources, and will have minimal impact on natural resources in the area. So with that, I have a motion overhead. Myself, as well as City of Reno staff, are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Prior to questions, is there any public comment on this item?
There is, we've received one, and it's Barbara Rainey.
Thank you. Okay. And I've been told she has a PowerPoint that she'll be sharing.
Hopefully to stay on track, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, and
The timer
Commissioners.
will help you with that.
Yes, well, hopefully we'll get that up and get it up there bigger, and then we can start the timer. I've not used this before. So I'd like to add the blue arrow shows the conditions close to the Mount Rose Scenic Corridor. The site is 100 acres, but 40 acres of it is solar panels. And we have a lot of great plans in our area. Gosh, Reno, Sparks, Washoe County. Your plan, your goal number one is quality of regional living, and your second goal is natural environment. View sheds are important, scenic quality is important. So we've spent a lot of time on these plans, and I believe everyone is sincere in meaning what they say. So here's the plan. It's about 40 acres of solar panels. There's 200 to 300 solar arrays. Each array is like 16 little squares. And I got to thinking, how big's 40 acres? So I thought, well, how many football fields would fit inside that project? And that would be 30 football fields worth of solar. So if you can imagine 30 football fields of solar arrays, each one of those squares of 16 is an array, and there's 200 or 300 of those that will be there. The applicant likes to show that this is the visual impact from the freeway southbound. A little bit of a problem there, no one lives on the freeway. But people do live here in the Virginia foothills and have lived here for many generations. Washoe County Hillside Development section says to minimize impacts on significant view sheds, and I can't think of any more significant view shed than that one. It is for our neighbors, our friends, our family, our visitors coming down Geiger Grade, our visitors to the Geiger Grade Lookout, and this is what you will be doing if you approve this project. You will put 30 football fields of 200 to 300 solar arrays right there in that view. Now, maybe that's not enough, but has anybody asked about how they're going to pile drive, not concrete, but physically pile drive 400 to 600 footings into the site to put that array in, and the effect of the stability of the freeway that's right there, and the effect on the active earthquake fault network. The power generated by this project will not flow to the grid. It's for ORMAT use only. Those panels are efficient. They're probably some of the best. Good panels absorb about 20%. These probably, I'm going to give them a generosity of 50%, absorbing and turning it into electricity. The rest is emitted as heat. Have you heard of an urban heat island? UHI is really hot right now, no pun intended. Washoe County Master Plan thinks it's so important that they're going to add policies mitigating impacts of urban heat islands. We don't know enough about this project to know how much heat it is going to generate, but we do know how ugly it's going to be and how it's going to impact the visual quality of our lives. So follow the plan and the plan and the plan and the plan. Follow your goals, follow your heart. There's better ways to do this. Solar is getting better all the time. The longer we wait, the smaller that project would have to be to have the energy that they need. So please protect our scenic beauty and refer this project back to the applicant to reduce the physical footprint and visual impact. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, would you please provide your name?
Yes, my name is Barbara Rainey, R-A-I-N-E-Y. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other public comment?
There's none.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions? Seeing none, does somebody want to propose a motion? Commissioner Reed, who's going for their microphones?
Save my voice. I will go ahead and propose the motion. I move to find the ORMAT solar project of regional significance in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Taylor, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gower, I'll just make a comment that I appreciate the comments made during public comment. I also appreciated when they were made during public comment at the City of Reno Planning Commission meeting. I do agree that we have a number of plans in place that address things like scenic quality, and the tricky thing with planning at the regional level or master plan or site level is that you're balancing a number of competing policy priorities and site development priorities. For me, I was able to make all the findings at the City of Reno Planning Commission level, and I can make them at the regional planning level based on the balance of those various policies. I feel that the benefits of this this project in terms of increasing the efficiency of the geothermal facility and balancing the load provided by that facility and the contribution of green energy to the grid. I do feel that techniques were incorporated to minimize the visual impacts of the project. And I feel that after looking at all the various policies in the regional plan, I can make all of the findings. So I wanted to put that on the record and again, reiterate my appreciation for the comments made during public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Any other comments from commissioners? So do note that we do have one recusal, but all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5D.
I'm back.
Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the clicker. So item 5D, I'm going to give this presentation. It is a public hearing, consideration and possible adoption of the 2022 Washoe County Consensus Forecast. Just to kind of start the item, you'll notice that today there were a couple of sheets of paper at your positions on the dais here. And also these were posted online earlier today. One of them is some updated information in terms of two of the tables from the consensus forecast draft that we shared. So when we go move to adopt, if that happens, the consensus forecast, then we would want to use these tables that I've referenced here in this extra sheet. And then further, we got a letter confirming the comparison of the consensus forecast with identified sustainable water resources. That's a process we do every time we do the consensus forecast. We go to the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. They take a look at the forecast. They then cast that against the number of water resources in acre feet that have been identified, and they make a recommendation whether or not it can be served, and they push that up to the Western Regional Water Commission, and then they make the final say. So that letter memorializes that process that went through, and both bodies recommended that it can be served. And so that is now part of the record as well. Okay, with that, let's go into the new forecast. So I always like to start with this description. What the heck is a consensus forecast? And it's really a combination of several forecasts. Any given model always has some bias built into it. And so by taking four, in this case for population, 4 independent models of the future and averaging them, the idea is that we will remove that bias and get something that is probably a little bit more realistic. And so that's sort of the first definition of consensus. I also like the second definition of consensus, which is that it provides the region with a common outlook of the future to use in planning. And our policies require that this consensus forecast becomes one of the primary sources used to look at population growth in the region, in the master plans, in the facility plans, et cetera. So that's the other kind of consensus. We get everyone on board that this is what we're expecting, and we're using that same number. And so we use it for long-range planning, and we do it every 2 years to make sure that we're keeping up with changing trends. We have been using these same 4 sources, the best of my knowledge, since the first forecast was done in 2003. I took over the process in 2014. So those 4 sources that we use are Woods and Pool, that's a national forecasting house, and also IHS Markit, another national forecasting house. They provide kind of most of the information that's in the forecast past the population part. But for population, we also get a projection from the state demographer. And Sean Stoddard, the resource manager, statistician guy at TUMWA, who's been doing a curve, a model of population growth for the region to support TUMWA's goals for many, many years. And so that's been a great resource as well. So we just take those and, actually, I added a new slide. So the forecast itself, the document, which is the draft that's inside your packet, really presents these metrics. So in population, it's the overall 20-year outlook. It gets divided into 5-year age cohorts, so you can see how that might change over time. Also aggregated into larger age cohorts, school-aged children, working-aged people, and retired people. And then there's that comparison with water resources component. We also give an employment growth forecast, a forecast of income, And then we'll go into a little detail about the future population and dwelling unit splits. Okay, so here is the draft version of the 2022 forecast. It's a lot of lines on this graph, so let's go through them. The big kind of middle blue dashed line is that average line. That is the forecast after you average the four sources. And the four sources are the non-dashed lines. And just for comparison's sake, I put in the 2020 consensus forecast in the other dashed line, which you can see in the out years is a little bit lower. So that one 2 years ago was forecasting about 92,000 people. This one is at 98, almost 99,000 people. And they're all one thing that also jumps to mind every time I look at this graph is in the short term, they're very similar, right? And we do it every 2 years. And so we're looking at that short term and everything kind of lines up. It's always the case that when you get out to the 20-year out year, things are going to vary based on the methodology of the modeling. So that's, again, why we keep revisiting this every time. And this is what that actually looks like when you keep revisiting it over the years. So the Washoe County performed this first in 2003, and then it was not until 2008 that it was performed again, but then every other year after 8, so 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and now 22, it has been done. And this is what we're looking at here. So the black line on the left is a series from the governor's certified estimate. So every year, the demographer puts together an estimate, and the governor certifies it, and so we can kind of consider that the actual. It's still an estimate because we can't really count everyone every year, but it's pretty close to being as an actual as we can get. So that's where we've actually been. And then the other lines represent the consensus forecasts through time. And I think there's two outliers that you can see that sort of shoot off into the stratosphere there, coming off that big uptick we were experiencing, pre-recession. That's 2008 and 2010. 2010 is kind of slightly moving its way down. And what it kind of illustrates, though, is that there's a lag in these, especially in the national forecasting models. There is a lag in, so we always want to be checking in, knowing that maybe there's a few year lag in what's really being perceived. But if you look at the rest of them, they all do a pretty darn good job of tracking with that black line and kind of tracking together out into the future. And the yellow line is the initial one, 2003, and it's amazing what a good job they did that first forecast did in kind of predicting where we'll be. It's obviously population goes up and down, and these forecasts are straight lines often. So there's that. It's a bit artificial in that sense, but again, that's why we check in as often as possible. So I've really been enjoying making this graph every 2 years to see how it goes. Yeah, I do. I love graphs. Okay, so on to the employment forecast. This one, it's always a difficult proposition because employment gets reported two different ways. There's covered employment, which is what you see if you go to like DETR or the QCEW data, Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages. And it can be anywhere from 30 to 35% lower than total employment. And total employment includes things like real estate agents, self-proprietors, some military stuff, and some other things as well. And so that, we want to make sure we're getting an accounting of total jobs because that's going to impact traffic patterns. It's going to impact, wastewater generation and all the things that we need to be thinking about in terms of public facilities. So what I do is I do an analysis using the Bureau of Economic Analysis data. It's usually about 2 years behind because that's what they report, but it is total jobs by county. You can get that information and then compare that to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, which is the covered employment for that same year, which is, like I say, in this case, it was 2020, and understand that difference. And then I apply the difference to the blue line at the bottom, which is from the IHS product, to bring it up into the total job zone so that we can get an average of those two sources. Sean Stoddard at Tumwa doesn't do this employment forecast. The state demographer periodically does one, but it's not reliably available, so we just use the two sources. So we're looking to add about 67,000 jobs to Washoe County over the next 20 years, according to the forecast. And I'll just quickly step back. Looking to add around 100,000, that's 98,299 people as well in that same period. Okay, so now on to what's interesting and what has been corrected to some degree in this little extra sheet that I've brought here. Things have changed since the 2019 regional plan. the regional plan has tried to become less jurisdictionally focused and more regionally focused and sort of non-jurisdictional. And this consensus forecast used to use a process called jurisdictional splits, where we would look at the historic percentage of development across the region in the 3 jurisdictions and use that as a guide for how the future would unfold as well. We also took, and that was about 75% of the forecast, and then there's another quarter of the forecast that went into transit-oriented development corridors and regional centers. Well, with the 2019 update, we sort of changed paradigms, and we moved away from the Todd Center paradigm to the tiering paradigm. So now we have regional land designations. So in 2020, we came up with a way to address the splits by regional land designations, by the tiers. And so that's what we're seeing here. It's a little bit tough to read those numbers, but they are in the packet. But basically, I can tell you the story with the tiers and the graph at the top there. So the light blue bar that's at the right of each of those little clusters, there's 3 clusters, right? There's the mixed use core cluster first, then tier 1, then tier 2, tier 3, and then finally the rural area. And then the y-axis is a percent share. So what this graph is showing is that if you look across the tiers, what percent share of development is being realized in each of these regional land designations? And we look at it in 3 different time chunks. So we analyze what's happened over the past 20 years, what's happened over the past 10 years, and what's been happening over the past 5 years. And so that's how we kind of get at where we're heading in terms of the trend. So just jumping right out to that big, giant 3 columns in the middle there, that's tier 2. Tier 2 is where we have most of the development, new development happening in the region. It's where most of our entitlements are. It's where most of our vacant land is that we haven't put into tier 3. And what you can see is that the 20-year is at about 60, let's see, tier 2 looks like 66 point something percent, right? 66.5. If you look at 20 years, but if you look at the past 10 years, only about 62% of the growth has been happening in there. And if you look at the last 5 years, it's down to 60%. And so the trend is that more stuff is going to the core. The opposite trend you can see in mixed use core in tier 1, right there to the left, tier 1, you can see it clearly going up. So in the past 5 years, we've been seeing a lot more dwelling unit activity in tier 1 than we did if you look over 20 years. So what we're trying to do here is respect those trends in how we propose the future share of population will be realized on the landscape when we actually model and disaggregate the population to vacant parcels that can receive it. So we also, the thing that I brought here that I didn't do properly the first time when I sent it was that I didn't also include in that proposed future share average, or rather I didn't include in the jurisdictional average the historic share, which is actually an important balancing maneuver. It's one of 4 that creates the average. And so what we end up seeing is that for the future, we're casting this into the tiers, which are non-jurisdictional, but we're going to try to adhere to plus or minus 5%, this kind of about 60% going to Reno, about 23% going to Sparks, and about 16% going to the county. But that is really kind of an after modeling assessment that we'll put on top of it. Our targets would be based on regional land designations and the non-jurisdictional approach to realizing future dwelling units. But we just want to make sure that we're not putting it all in Reno, or that's not realistic to see. So that is why I updated this to include that historic share, and it had some impacts to Table 15, which kind of describes what the potentials for population could be in each jurisdiction, but we won't really know where that falls until I actually do the spatial disaggregation. And that's work we're going to start now. If this gets adopted tonight, then we'll start on the next phase, and then we'll bring that back to show you as well. I think with that, I have a motion above, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Prior to that, do we have any public comment on this item?
We received none for this item.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just trying to get it right in my head. So basically, overall, we're looking at roughly between now and 2042, 60% of the future growth is going to be in Tier 2. And we're expecting of that, 60% is going to be in Reno, 23% is going to be in Sparks, and 16 is going to be in Washoe County. It's kind of the possible jurisdictional breakout.
So certainly the first part, we're expecting about 60% in Tier 2. That's mainly because that's where most of our suburban entitlements are. That's where it is. But we are putting 30% into the core, because that's obviously, we've been seeing that. We've been seeing the trend towards that. In terms of the jurisdictional breakdown, I don't know that it will match those numbers by tier. But overall, we're going to shoot to be within a range of plus or minus 5% of those divisions.
Okay, thanks. That helps clear it up. That's really interesting to kind of hear, and we'll see in 20 years how we did.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question on that, similar to Commissioner Carey's and a follow-on. Jeremy, I'm curious, out of the percentage, that 16% to the county, if it's part of this analysis that you look at, essentially what percentage of that 16% is overlaid by a sphere of influence of either city?
Yes, we absolutely would be looking at what percentage of that would be overlaid by a sphere of influence. I'd have to look, when I do the spatial disaggregation, that's where we'll get at those capacities. But typically we often treat the sphere as part of the city when thinking about the future, because that would be, if it's going to be a development that occurs, it will probably be annexed in. I saw very little evidence that developments are occurring in the sphere when I did this recent statistics work. Maybe like one unit in the sphere of Reno happened, over the 20-year period.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Everybody has quizzical looks. Math makes our heads hurt.
Maybe I could just add a little bit.
Please.
I'll just add a little bit more to that, Peter. For most of the time, in the sphere, there aren't very many existing entitlements, right? The sphere kind of covers vacant land that may be subdivided to a level that could take a few houses here or there, but you're not going to see like a daybreak in the sphere. That's going to be in the city. So typically the city portion is going into the city limits. That helped clarify.
It does, and I appreciate the clarification. I'm actually, I have the benefit of having another computer screen up, and I've got the handy dandy TMRPA regional web viewer up on that screen, and I'm looking at the turning on and off the layers for the city of Reno sphere of influence over Tier 2 land, and it's actually quite striking how many portions of the region, of the sphere, I should say, overlay those Tier 2 lands, and that's the purpose of my question. So I'm just curious that you're looking at that, which it sounds like you are. So that was really what I was trying to get at.
Yep, absolutely. And, some of the, just as a bit of a aside, but related, there has been discussion at the Regional Planning Governing Board that in advance and heading towards the 2024 update of the regional plan, that we would work with the City of Reno staff to take a look at that sphere of influence. We did a really nice process during 2019 where we worked with the City of Sparks to identify areas in their sphere that they had no intent to annex ever. And so, in fact, we worked to remove those areas, and it ended up being about 1,100 parcels. And so we're hoping to do a similar process with City of Reno.
And I think that'd be really valuable. And that's something that we've talked about at the Planning Commission at the city, is the benefit of the City of Reno Planning Commission, and frankly, this commission and agency as well, being involved in annexation decisions in the sense of informing the process of those decisions. So I appreciate that you're doing that, Jeremy.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Any other questions? So we have a motion on the screen.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I just want to, before I make the motion, just compliment Jeremy and the staff on the amount of aggregated work here and the graphics involved, which is Unfortunately, I printed them in black and white, which is not helpful, but
I did the same thing, yes.
definitely appreciated the level of effort there, and what we're seeing. It's just, from 2 years ago till now, it's getting better all the time. Really wanted to get that on the record as well. And so with that, I move to adopt the 2022 Washoe County Consensus Forecast with the revisions to tables 12 and 15 as presented in the additional documentation this evening.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Gower, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So, item 6, reports. 6A, members and directors' reports. Director?
Director, okay, well, I learned from the previous chair that I need to be quiet until members have spoken, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's the only thing I got trained in an entire year.
Awesome. Just a short report. The Regional Planning Governing Board took action to basically send back to this body recommendations about changes to the projects of regional significance guidelines. That just happened this month at their meeting, so we anticipate bringing that possibly in September, if not October, so we can get started on that work and hopefully get that solved. And there's actually quite a few good little housekeeping things that are happening in there that'll bring the guidelines up to snuff, which turns out we do periodically review those guidelines and update them, so it's been a good process. And then there's also some policy or guideline recommendations around schools, and so we'll be able to have that conversation when it comes forth. We're also anticipating in September bringing forth a housekeeping item. Every year in October, we do the housekeeping update to the regional plan, and that's going to include any kind of things we found that are wrong in there, little grammar fixes. We had a point about how we were portraying regional utility corridors, and they were kind of being portrayed outside of the county in the same way, outside of our jurisdiction. So we're going to fix that up. But just little fixes are coming your way, so you can expect that. Recently, Nate Kusha and Shawnee Sousa participated in a bike workshop, which was pretty well attended. So that just happened this week. That was pretty cool. And I guess with that, that's about all I have. Our next meeting will be in this room, September 22nd, and also on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. 6B, legal counsel report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Prunty for the record. Looks like the director covered the items I was going to speak on, so he beat me to the punch. That's perfect.
Okay, item 7, request for future agenda items. Seeing none, we'll move on. Is final public comment? Any public comment?
There's none.
Written correspondence.
There's none.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.